Hi everyone, this is Karak from Angry Centaur Gaming. If you know me, you know that I usually like my games with things exploding, people's heads flying off, diabolical betrayal, and maybe even hot chicks, occasionally playing volleyball, so pretty much like the normal middle school recesses we all are used to. What happens in Karak's world when he hears word of a new collectible card game? Aside from thoughts of sweaty nerds yelling at one another as they slickly thumb through large swaths of collectible cards with a net worth of Cuba, another thought goes through my mind. Just what in the hell am I getting into? But you know what? Sometimes, like a drunk airline pilot, you just gotta throw your hands up in the air and say fuck it, and that's what I'm doing. So I present to you Nightbanes, a game that used to be a browser-based card game, but has now jumped to Steam. It's free to play, has some in-game currencies, and is also out tomorrow, March 27th. So let's see what trouble we can get into, shall we? As always, this review is caffeinated, which means information delivered at speed. So let's get to it. Graphics are up first. In games like this, usually there are three things that make up the graphics: the card art, the background, and the animations, if any, that play out when one card smashes like a blind mosh pit bulldog into another. First, I have to say I dug the card art. It's not animated like, let's say, Infinity Wars, but it's high-stakes stuff with some insanely good overall art patterns and a stylistic approach that I like to call horror tech porn. It's really well done stuff. And when I say porn, I don't mean it's actual sexualized, I just mean it's really damn good horror tech looking. Animations and spell effects are actually very good, with spell effects, clashes of cards, and particles flying around the game screen. I mean, let's be honest, it's actually two rectangles smashing into one another like it's supposed to mean something, but the developers went out of their way to make sure that even that is actually nice to look at, with some cool effects playing out every time there's an interaction. Now, the backgrounds themselves are fairly nondescript and nothing to write home about, but it's also the least important of the important aspects of graphics. Now, when it comes to sound, music, and voice, the sounds themselves are actually excellent for what plays, and though not by any terms is it a super layered game, it's also not like many games of this type where barely anything actually happens sound effects wise. All in all, it's not bad, with various sounds informing the gamer of a good hit or a thunderous failure. Not much in the sound effects department, but what's there is good. Now, when it comes to music, there seems to be basically almost just one track. I would say I just sort of ignored the music. It wasn't good or bad, it was just ambient and in the background. On to voice, there is none, so who gives a shit? Let's move on. Gameplay. Now, gameplay for Nightbanes is actually fairly quick and easy, with your main character being the lowest impactor on the playing field. Instead, you almost solely concentrate on the cards being dealt into your hand, which consist of things like monsters to play in their skills, items, artifacts, powers, locations, and so forth. Locations and artifacts offer unique powers to your entire side and to some cards, while items usually help one monster, and it's of course the monsters that are placed on the field and they try to tear each other up like two kids fighting over the last of the sugar straws. And if you haven't seen that, it's not for the faint of heart. Moving on. Now, playing it, I admit I really actually did like the gameplay. Sure, it's simplistic and is far more of a what you see is what you get kind of game due to how the cards are dealt. It's also not without overarching strategies that play out more so within the deck building than within the card game itself. Where many collectible card games are a long-term relationship with all its ups and downs, Nightbanes is a one-night stand with fireworks and possible failure smashing you right in your damn face if you get a bad draw. The game really does hinge on luck a great deal, and if you get a good number of playable cards up front, you can usually crush the enemy without a second thought. Additionally, if you don't end up drawing the best hand at first, it can be like a running game of watch the enemy AI smash your hand into oblivion without you able to do a damn thing. However, much of this can be alleviated by being intelligent in deck building, and due to the small deck size, limited to just 30 cards, you can really make sure you have the absolute best cards possible for your hand and your playstyle. I admit, I really did like this, let's say, shallower but faster gameplay style that also made deck building so important, but also so quickly reflected in the gameplay and if I succeeded or failed at the very next game. Now, much of my gameplay was the AI as quests, which involved taking down enemies and getting treasures from defeating them and moving on to other battlefields after I defeated a certain number of opponents. and on those other battlefields, other card types. However, at times this moving actually caused me personal issues with my deck building, as moving to another battlefield and enemy type means that the cards you could win many times didn't fit with what I wanted, meaning I could either battle them to move on or stay in the current battlefield and beat those guys again and again and again and again and again and a fucking again, leaving me with the ogre's choice: die quick or die slow. Monsters fill up the battlefield and fight whatever is across from them, and there are a ton of different monster types like corrupted and undead, and many have special skills that make them more or less efficient against other types, or sometimes against the evil lords themselves. And also for evil lords, these guys are giant wussies, usually outfitted with less than, say, 20 hit points. They act a lot like bad military leaders, sending everyone out to fight for them, and they just sit back and ruminate on financial matters. As monsters go out into the field, they gather blood points each turn, and each monster requires a specific amount of them to start taking actions. Some as little as 1, while others, very high powered, can need 6 or more. It's a fantastic interplay of power and time that can change the style of play you use if you get a unique card on a draw or in a booster pack and you want to put it in your deck. Additionally, the game has a shitload of cards starting out, and with only 30 in play at any one time, I really did feel like my deck was unique to me and me alone, even if that uniqueness was actually just how shitty it would be against other players. Now, when it comes to the free-to-play part, the starter cards easily worked against the AI, but I question just how useful they would be against other players who spent even a small bit of cash within the game. You can also evolve and upgrade your cards, which is fantastic fun, but evolving almost demands you spend real cash, as many times it requires high numbers of the same card, while upgrading could take you a lifetime of smashing the same Vampire Lord into a Sunlight Demise to gain enough money to upgrade a large number of your current cards. Either way, it's pretty much like most free-to-play games, where they offer a good deal of fun up front, but getting top-tier stuff does indeed cost cash or sexual favors to get the cash. Now, all this sort of builds up to fun factor, and honestly, guys, I actually really liked the game. It could be because of the short, intense burst of gameplay. It meant if I lost, I turned around to play again quickly, and if I won, I could never get comfortable because a bad luck draw made the next game very intense and made my life a living hell. It was glorious, actually. The animations and sound do an excellent job to make the game visually interesting, and despite not purchasing cards, I was able to upgrade a couple cards by playing the main story's quests and outfitting my deck with some cool-ass art to at least fool myself into thinking I could take on a player or two, which I couldn't. And that is the real barrier to entry there. You can play the quest single player. I think you'll do fine. I think the real barrier entry here is, of course, the multiplayer, and I don't think that is, anything special compared to other games. Now, when it comes to longevity, you can take this two ways, which happens to be the same warning I give all my dates. You can do it totally free, which means you can upgrade some cards, play through the quest, and have a long bout of gameplay completely free, though most online players will be far past your card and skill level. Or you can put a little cash into it and pick some cards up to collect, or perhaps buy a couple decks to see if you'll get enough cards to maybe perhaps evolve a couple. If you do, then you will have a far better chance of taking on human players. Due to the game's very short gameplay time, maybe 10 minutes at absolute tops, you will know fairly quickly if what you have created deck-wise is worth it for you. The game's been around as a web-based game since 2013, I believe, somewhere around there, and it seems to have its fair number of fans even now before it jumped to Steam, so I think other people see some of the fun and longevity that's within this game. Either way, the longevity itself does not actually appear to be in question. So as you guys know, I normally rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, render, never talk about it again rating scale. Since this is a free-to-play, I'm going to just use a different version, which is worth a look or not. There's really not much else I can say about this. Obviously, I think Nightbanes is actually worth a look. In fact, I don't think I would personally be opposed to spending a couple bucks on it as well. The game's turns are quick. The cards are excellent. The gameplay is basic, but there is an underlying complexity there as you play that allows you to minimize those luck draws and make the game seem a little bit less based on luck, which I know some people have dinged on this game in the past as being a game based on luck. It is to a point, but deck building is very, very important here. And I just don't see that spending a couple bucks on this game is gonna actually be something that aggravates me. I will most likely be doing that. So that's it for me. If you liked the video, hit like. If you disliked it, hit dislike. And peace out.